Welcome to the Night Tube. I'm Stephen Knight. Welcome to my Mythcon V debrief. I was in Milwaukee. It was a couple of weeks ago now. I've been meaning to put a video together or a blog post or a podcast maybe just detailing my experiences there of the panels, of the other guests and the general antics and goings on. So I'll talk a little bit about the speakers, I'll talk a little bit about the panels, I'll talk about the bomb threat we had, some of the controversy from last year, just give you a general flavour of what people say about the event and what the event is when you're actually there. I suppose first thing to talk about would be the event last year. That was very controversial. I wasn't there last year. It landed on my radar because I saw a lot of people, sort of left-leaning circles, screeching about it. I think screeching is probably fair. Describing it as some sort of alt-right rally, some neo-Nazi get-together, and I'm always very suspicious. Always very sensitive to people trying to close down discussion, to try and get events cancelled, get people to disinvite themselves or get people no platform. I'm always very keen to see what the issues are underneath that, whether there's any substance to it or whether it's entirely ideologically motivated. And it's felt like the latter with Mythcon. The main controversy, as far as I could see, centred around Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad. So I'll be speaking quite a bit about him actually. I spent quite a fair bit of time with him, and I saw his panel with Richard Carey, which was very interesting. Vast improvement over the Thomas Smith debacle from last year. Not a great job from Thomas. Went out very emotional, was insulting to the audience, insulting to the organisers, insulting to Carl, stormed off stage at the end, didn't stay for the Q&A. It was fucking awful. I'll be honest, it was awful. So it was interesting to see what had happened when Sargon sat down with somebody who had a better temperament, was a bit more knowledgeable, and I think Richard Carrier probably came off better in that debate. So I'll be going into the ins and outs of that. The good thing about me doing this a bit later than planned is that all these panels, I think most of them actually are online now, so you can find them on the channels of the people involved in the panel or on Mythicist Milwaukee's official YouTube channel as well. So I'm just gonna go through the con and the panels. But I mean, in regards to last year and how controversial it was, I invited on onto the show to talk about it Brian and Sean, the organisers of the show. And let me see if I can find these guys. And I wanted to speak to them because they could have been people who were just... Hello, that's my cat. You can tell I'm not planning this very well. There she is again. Yeah, so you could really understand a bunch of people who just wanted to sort of monetize outrage, just get a bunch of pantomime villains in a room and let them say awful things and just wait for the fallout, just wait for the clicks. And I mean, that is, it's a business model. So I wanted to speak to Sean and Brian on my show, and I spoke to them last year just to find out what they were like, to find out what their goals were, what they thought, how well they handled themselves, whether they were shock jocks or professionals. And you can all listen to that podcast, and they come across so much more professional than the critics, and actually meeting them in person, spending a lot of time with them, they're just as thoughtful and passionate and funny as you could imagine. Really nice, sweet guys to hang out with. Not just that, they genuinely care about the conversation. They're interested in ideas. I mean, this is Sean here. This is Brian, that handsome devil with Terminator red eyes, that's me. And Dimitri as well, who's not in that image, who's the MC, did a great job. They're just spending time with them, talking to them, being around them when cameras aren't rolling or they're not being interviewed, and getting a flavour of their character. These are the kind of guys I want to see running a conference. These are my guys, basically. What they're doing is far more interesting to me in the current political climate than some conference about whether or not God exists or people all singing to the same page. So what I would recommend is if you value what they're doing at Mythcon, if you've enjoyed some of the panels, even if you can't attend yourself but you want to support this kind of debate and conversation, they've set up a GoFundMe link, which I'll put in the description of the video. because they're looking to expand the conference next year, looking to make it, travel, take it on the road. It might come to a different city in America. They may even move out of America at some point. So it's quite an exciting prospect. Let's take a quick look at some of the announced speakers at Mythcon. This is quite a diverse bag. You've got English, black, trans. You've got a cartoon there, and biracial, Asian. Dimitri's Russian, handsome, trans, Australian, bearded. I know Michael Rowland's from New Zealand. They even got a bald guy in. Ahmed's Canadian, Blair's trans, he was gay, straight, everything in between, and it just seems to me on the face of it, this is the kind of thing that the far left social justice warriors played lip service to, this idea of diversity, representing all kinds of people, yet they seem very incapable of achieving themselves. I don't know many conferences that has this many different types of people from different walks of life and experiences. And not just that I don't actually give a shit about that, I'll be honest with you. That doesn't matter to me. Ideas matter to me. What's great to see about this as well is diversity of opinion, diversity of thought. We had people on the left, people on the right, centrists, conservatives. And it was great to see them different viewpoints come into collision in real time on stage. And what's quite funny is as well, a lot of these people are big YouTube personalities that have personal beef with each other online. I don't tend to get into that kind of thing on the YouTubes. But it's funny when you put them in a room together and there's not that keyboard or there's not that separation, they talk and they find common ground. And I think a lot of people are not happy about that. A lot of people are happy to draw lines and say, this is my tribe and this is what you must think. So I was very pleased to meet a lot of these people and spend a bit of time with them. So I think I'll talk about Sargon of Akkad first, because he's probably the most controversial and well-known figure on the roster here. I've met Carl before at the Day for Freedom in London, went over, introduced myself, said hello, and perfectly pleasant, charming, friendly, polite. But I think what you need to understand about him is his influence is huge. So a lot of people who don't like him, who take issue with a lot of his viewpoints and his rhetoric and the way he approaches things, because he's a culture warrior, he's always on the attack, he's very much in the trenches on this kind of thing. It's very much offensive, not in terms of I'm offended by that, but I mean offense. And he's prolific in his output, so obviously he's going to produce things we don't agree with, he's going to say things we don't agree with, he's going to be mean sometimes, he's going to be provocative. That's fine, or not fine, it's okay not to think that's fine. But I think what you need to understand is when people start saying he shouldn't speak at events, he should be deplatformed, that doesn't stop him reaching people. He's got millions of subscribers and views. If you don't invite him to conferences, he goes on influencing people via his channels. What happens when you invite him to conferences? He gets to sit down and gets his opinions and views challenged in real time, and that happened this time, and I think he didn't come off great, I'll be honest. And he's since made a video kind of acknowledging that, and kind of acknowledging he was a bit rude and he went in a bit too hard on Richard. So it'll be interesting to get your thoughts on that when you see it. But Carl's massive. Basically, he's a celebrity when you're at these events. People are constantly coming up to him, wanting pictures, wanting to talk to him, spend time with him, and he obliges, and he's very friendly and nice. There was I spent a fair bit of time with him. It wasn't by design. I think there was a bomb threat, an actual bomb threat. So on my second panel, near the end of it, about a minute to go there, I noticed that the organisers were getting a little bit panicky to the right of stage, and they kind of had to end things quite abruptly during the Q&A, and to their credit, they didn't cause any panic. They just told everyone they need to go for an early lunch break, they need to leave the building for an hour, and it was me and David Smalley basically, and Carl, just by chance leaving the building at the same time. So when there's a bomb threat and you have to leave the building, what's the best way of dealing with that? Pub, obviously. So we went across the street to a little pub in Milwaukee, sat down, nobody knew we was in there, had some food, a couple of drinks, and this young girl, this lady comes in, she's in a wheelchair, she somehow managed to get wind that Carl was in there. She was so excited to see him. She comes over to him, Carl gets up, spends a good 10 minutes talking to her, taking pictures with her, and she was so excited at seeing him, and thanking him for his content, thanking him for representing her voice, essentially. So there's this woman, she's in a wheelchair, she lives on the other side of the planet, but she's thanking him for representing her. So this is the kind of influence he has. His reach is monumental. So I have family members who don't give a shit about my content. They couldn't care less. But every now and then I'll hear back. Did you know that Sargon of Akkad mentioned you in one of his videos? And they're excited about that I've been in a Sargon video. So you can't deal with that kind of influence by saying you're not welcome to the table. You shouldn't be allowed to sit down and have your say. You have to challenge it. You have to convince his fans that maybe he's not 100% on some issues, and that's the way you do it. That's the way you change minds. So I'm not having this Carl doesn't deserve a seat at the table. If anything, Carl's table is probably more prominent than this entire conference. He's probably got a bigger reach in this conference. He's probably doing the conference a favour by being there. So yeah, I spent a bit of time with Sargon of Akkad. Perfectly lovely, perfectly nice, charming, polite, attentive, listens, nice to talk to. So I can't, on a personal level, just on a personal interaction basis, no problems with Carl whatsoever. I don't agree with I don't agree with everything he says. Obviously, that'd be stupid, wouldn't it? How can you possibly agree with everything someone says? Moving on, Derek Blackman, nice guy. Got to speak to him briefly in the green room. I think we had a little chat about video games, trying to talk about which video game publishers have a pretty flawless record. He was talking about Rocksteady and Rockstar, and I offered Naughty Dog of The Last of Us, Uncharted fame, Crash Bandicoot. Angel, she was really sweet. Spent quite a fair bit of time with her. Really funny, really talented, great singing voice. Richard Carrier did a great job on his debate with Sargon. I'll be talking a little bit about that later. Chrisiosity, fair play. She's someone who I've interacted with briefly on Twitter. She's someone I probably disagree with on most things, and I'll be just highlighting a couple of things in a minute or two on her panel. But one of the things the organizer made clear to me is that whenever they try and get somebody who's got academic credentials or is well known in the field of intersectionality, or who's a sort of a prominent far left activist or a social, quote unquote social justice warrior, they can't get them to defend their views on stage. I think they told me something like they'd spent over 80 hours of manpower trying to convince somebody to represent the argument at the conference, and they couldn't. But they managed to get Chrisiosity. She said yes. So I don't agree with everything she says. I'll be honest, I don't think she did a particularly great job on the panel. But that could be, that could just be my bias. You judge for yourself. You go and watch it. Tell me what you think. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for her for getting on a plane, coming to a city in basically, I probably imagine it would have felt like the Lion's Den. People, the majority of whom probably don't share her viewpoints. And she went out on stage and she represented what she thought. So, fair play. Lauren Chen, aka Roaming Millennial. See, this is an unusual one. So I'm familiar with her name. I wasn't familiar with her content, really. The first time I'd seen her speak on anything was on stage on the intersectionality panel. And I thought she did really well. I was very impressed with... She steel-manned, basically. She took the arguments of her opponents, actually made them stronger in her summary, and then kind of critiqued them in a really, really interesting way. So she was lovely, dead nice. But this is what's very strange about this whole conversation now, she's a right-wing conservative, Trump-voting right-wing conservative in America. I think somebody at the conference told me she's not somebody who believes in evolution, or maybe she was and she dialed that back. I'm not sure. I'll have to check that for myself. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that a right-wing conservative denies evolution. You know, what else is new? So this is what's frustrating to me at the moment. We have somebody like Lauren Chen, a roaming millennial, huge, you know, massive following, making a tremendous amount of sense on really important topics of intersectionality and culture wars and identity politics. Yet she's on the right. She has a lot of views and opinions that don't chime with my political viewpoints, and it's frustrating to me that people on the right seem to be holding court on the topic of free speech and identity politics. I mean, I just think us lefties need to be better at reclaiming those things. Melissa Chan, Melissa's great. Spent a fair bit of time with her. She's doing some important work with Faisal Al-Mattar. What's it called? Ideas Beyond Borders. So funny, so smart. I always appreciate a sense of humor in somebody. So if somebody can make me giggle, they're my friend for life. She brought along a guest. There he is, Little Gibbs. Little Gibbs there. He was pretty much the star of the show. Little tip for you, gentlemen who are in the single game and are trying to find new novel ways to get women to speak to you. If you get a cute little dog around about that size, you get yourself a Gibbs, women will come and talk to you. I mean, lots of people came up and spoke to me throughout the conference. As soon as I held that dog, there was a queue of women just wanting to speak to me and talk, to stroke the dog. So if you're single and you're looking for a way into conversations with new women, to meet people and strike up conversations, get yourself a Gibbs. It's scientifically proven to open conversations. But Mel was great. Really enjoyed spending time with her. I hope I get to meet her again. I did hope to sit down and talk to her and get a conversation on camera, but the sort of bomb threat we had kind of torpedoed the hour or so I had free to arrange all these things. So I managed to get a conversation with David Smalley, which is on my YouTube channel. So please have a look at that as well. But yeah, Melissa Chen was great. I definitely consider looking at some of her work, seeing what she's up to. Good with the Twitter as well. Just good with the Twitter. Doesn't get down and dirty in the petty little arguments. She uses Twitter really well. I could probably learn a lot from her on that front. Karen Garst, she's been on the show before, the faithless feminist. She's good, talks a lot of sense. I shared a car with her to one of the pre-show parties there, and we had a good chat. She was telling me a lot about Milwaukee and her upbringing. Perfectly pleasant, doing some great work. Jacqueline Glenn, she was on my panel that I was moderating. Perfectly nice, introduced myself beforehand, very friendly, funny. She's like a rock star there. Everyone wanted to speak to her, and I actually think she did a really good job on the panel. In regards to the content she produces, I remember seeing quite a bit of it a while back when Richard Dawkins used to tweet it out there, and I've not really dipped my toe into it recently, and that's not a criticism, really. It's just I don't spend a lot of time in them circles. She's kind of branched out, and she talks a lot about personal stuff now and other things, which is fine. I had a tremendous amount of respect for a video that I saw that she did a while back. She did a Jawar Mohammed cartoon and put her face to it, and that took guts for me, and that's not a lot of people do that. Not only was it funny, it was brave. So yeah, Jacqueline was great. Not a bad word to say about her. Chris Raygun, didn't have any idea who he was, and he didn't turn up. He missed his flight, apparently, poor lad. So he had some bad luck there. He was replaced last minute with the amazing Tim Pool, and he was on my second panel. Spoke a lot of sense, top guy. So yeah, you probably already know who he is. So definitely check out some of his stuff. Marissa, didn't know who she was. I saw some of her panel, so I'll speak about that. Dimitri, just a funny, charming, sneaky Russian. Did a tremendous job emceeing the event. Just great company, great to hang out with. Handsome chap, has the ability to go black and white on command. Claire Lemon. Claire's doing some great work with Quillette at the moment, and I was very pleased to be on her panel. Her and Tim, I don't mind admitting, spoke the most sense on that panel, and being part of the discussion, a valuable part of being part of the discussion is knowing when to shut up as well. So I kind of took a back seat on that one and just listened to Tim and Claire hold court, because they're right in the trenches of this sort of new form of media at the minute. Theron Mayer, didn't get to speak to her much. I didn't see much of her panel. I got to speak to her at the after party, and discovered she was South African. Didn't know, so I did my best to try and impress her with some of my Afrikaans. Not sure how that went, but she's perfectly lovely. Vadim Newquist, he's aka Creationist Cat. No idea who he was before, but he was on my panel, and I had no idea as well going into this who would disagree with who, or who had got priors in terms of disagreements. And it seemed like Jacqueline and Armored Skeptic on my panel had some run-ins with him before, and that played out on the stage. So I'll talk about that when I get there. But I have tremendous respect for him because he argued well. You might not agree with him, but he made his arguments, and he stuck by them, and he espoused them in a coherent way, and he was up against it. Basically, I think the majority of that panel was in obvious disagreement with him on a lot of things. So I said to him afterwards, I said I thought he did a good job. I might not agree with what he has to say, but he did a good job. He was really under the cosh there, and he handled it very well. Mario's great. Beautiful house. Didn't get enough time to speak to him, unfortunately, but he does a lot behind the scenes for the conference. And he moderated the Sargon versus Richard Carrier panel. The Quartering, aka Jeremy. Jeremy's gotten really well with him. Just fun to hang out with. Similar sense of humour. Yeah, so hopefully our paths will cross again at some time in the future. He was somebody who a while back just got totally sucker punched from behind, assaulted. And this is something we've talked about a little bit about online vitriol spilling over into the real world now. You used to get the keyboard warriors who are quite vicious online and very insultive. But it's turning into a scenario now where people like Jeremy can't, sit down at conferences or other places without somebody attacking him. So he's made a video on his channel, The Quartering, about that. So I think definitely look into that. It's just a shame that that's the kind of thing you have to worry about now. If you have opinions that don't align with the mainstream, overtly left talking points, now you're in danger of assault on the high street or at conferences or other places, and it's not good. So yeah, it's glad to see he's okay. I mean, he seemed quite shook up about the whole thing. No problems at Mythcon, as far as I'm aware. He managed to get out of that without being punched. So bonus. What else we got? Clay Rutledge, PhD. Didn't know anything about this guy, but he writes for Quillette, and he did really well on the intersectionality panel. Brought some credentials to it. Brought some sense of experience and authority, because this is a field that he's there in a professional capacity. Michael Rowlands, he was on the intersectional panel. Very curious to a sense, but somebody who I probably didn't agree with much of anything he said, but fair play to the guy. He's got on the plane from New Zealand, and he's said what he thinks and stood by his views in front of a live audience. It's not easy. And, talking about Chris Yossi and Michael, as hostile as they may have felt this event would be to them going in, I would imagine they probably had positive experiences from this, because I noticed, I can't speak for them, but I noticed a lot of people were coming up to a guest and saying, look, I don't agree with what you have to say, but I kind of respect the way you say it and the way you stand by it, and that's nice. Brittany was cool. Hung out with her. She moderated a panel, asked a question on the atheist panel as well. Armored Skeptic, wasn't familiar with him apart from what I knew about him from the last Mythcon, but cool guy to hang out with, very conversational, nice to talk to, friendly. He and June, aka Shoe on Head, said hello to them. They were lovely. David Smalley, this guy's a complete prick. Just an, when someone they just smell funny, and they're just constantly like racist. Oh no, I'm totally kidding. David is just the sweetest, funniest, nicest guy. Spent a lot of time hanging out with him. A lot of similar opinions, very similar sense of humor between us. He's my American brother, basically. Now he's my new American best friend. Had a lovely time having a few beers with him, talking about comedy, talking about the current climate. Yeah, he's a great guy. I'd definitely check out Dogma Debate. Karen Strown, I don't know. I'm sorry, Karen. She was funny. Spent a little bit of time talking to her in the after party. Got a photo with her. She's sort of like an anti-feminist, and made some good points. Blair White, didn't get to speak to Blair. I don't recall talking to her. I'm sure I said hello at some point, but we didn't really have any sort of meaningful conversation. So I've waffled on quite a bit. So let's just have a look at the panels, and I'll give you my thoughts on them. Honourable shout out to Andy No as well. Lovely guy, doing some great work, some fantastic journalism for Quillette. I was very pleased to meet him in person. Where is he? He's not listed as far as I can see, but just a top guy, doing some good journalism, travelling, going to places people don't go to, and writing some very incisive pieces on topics that people are afraid to touch. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on, and I was pleased to meet him. I hope our paths cross again at some point. Onto the panels. So, how has the political climate divided the atheist community? That's the panel I moderated on, and my idea on that is that moderators are generally annoyingly awful. You know, they kind of insert themselves when they don't need to. They make it about them, want to be the center of attention. So my goal on that panel was just to make sure that everybody got a fair shot. Everybody got their moment to talk. Don't let anyone dominate too much. If people are firing back and forth at each other, that's great. Allow the discussion to go on. I don't need to insert myself into that unless they're shouting over each other and no one can hear anything. So I think on that front, I think I did a good job, if I do say so myself. I think I did all right. It's really strange about nerves, because I'm not someone who's typically nervous about public speaking. I think the thought of it, you know, if I have to think too much about it leading up, that sends off the anxiety. And I wasn't nervous at all. So I'm on the side of the stage waiting for my name to be called, and I noticed one of the organisers across on the other side of the stage, I think it's Antonio, it appeared that he was taking a picture with his phone, and me, David Smalley and Jacqueline Glenn noticed this and all stood flipping the bird, thinking he's going to take a photo. Stood there for a good 4 minutes thinking, when is he going to take this photo? And then he started moving the camera around, and we realised, it's probably a video. So I don't think this has made its way online at some point, so I don't know if Antonio wants to check his footage, but he's got a video somewhere of us three looking like complete dicks, frozen like that. So what I'm trying to say is, just before going onto stage, laughing and joking, perfectly calm. Second I come out and sit down and look at the crowd, nerves go a little bit. And the way personally I get through that, and I always try and do this up front when I'm speaking publicly, is if I can get a laugh, if I can get a little chuckle, that settles me and calms me right down, because then I know everyone's on my side, everyone's my friend, and we can get on with it. So I'll just show you how I came out on that panel and what I said. You can hear the nerves, actually, I think, as I start, but I'll soon settle into it. Here's my opening volley.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and those who don't appreciate my oppressive binary labels. This is going to be a great discussion to get things moving with. I'm going to try to be a very unannoying moderator and just get to the point as soon as possible, and try and give an air of professionalism to the conversation. So, without further ado, David Smalley.
Yeah.
Why such a dick?
You know what? I told him I would give him until 11:30. Bye, guys.
Yeah, so that was great fun. I mean, if that didn't get a laugh, I probably would have just started crying. I don't feel bad about admitting that. David's a great sport, though. He was poking a little bit of fun. He was playfully referencing Thomas Smith's walk-off at last year's Mythcon. So he's a great sport, David. I knew when I did that, he's a comedian. I knew that he'd be able to handle it and run with it. So there was a little bit of a theme of us both poking fun at each other on our various panels throughout this conference. So that was great fun. Check that out. I'll put the link to it in the description of this video. It's also on my channel as well, the full panel. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. What else? Have women achieved gender equality in the US? I came in and out of that panel. Melissa Chen did a great job, funny, moderating, handled that really well. Okay, what impact does social justice activism have on the African American community? Now, I watched a lot of that from the side of the stage. Now, this lady here, Marissa Jania, apologize if I've got that wrong. She can talk. She's very passionate, and she's one of these people who's a machine gun talker. So there's no kind of pause in between thoughts. It's just go, 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 which made the job of Brittany Simon very difficult as moderator to kind of cut in and then bring in Derek. I remember at one point I was stood to the side of the stage and she must have been speaking non-stop for a good 4 minutes. And I thought, I'm going to go backstage. So backstage is down some stairs and pretty much underneath the theatre. So you go down some stairs and there's a kind of a complex underneath. And I could hear her still talking. I get in the green room, open the fridge, get a bottle of water. Someone starts talking to me. We have a good 3-minute conversation. She's still talking. All the way back up the stairs, back to the side of the stage, and she hasn't paused her breath and she's still going. So she really dominated that conversation. So that one's online as well, so definitely go and check that out. Okay, this is the second panel I was on. I was there to provide commentary, not there to moderate. Are social commentary outlets displacing the influence of mainstream media? Chris Reagan wasn't there, like I said. Tim Pool was, and Tim Pool and Claire basically held court on that conversation. I was quite happy to kind of take a back seat and listen to what they've got to say. I mean, I got a fair few points in. I think I had 3 goals when going to the conference that I thought if I can tick them off, or maybe 4 actually. If I can tick these off and fly home, I can be happy. So the first one was get a laugh. Done. Second one was mention ex-Muslims, a shout out to the work ex-Muslims are doing, and I managed to get that in at the end of my atheist panel. The third one was to talk about Charlie Hebdo, which I managed on this panel, and the fourth one was not to get punched, and basically ticked all them off. So overwhelming success on a personal level. But this was a great panel about how the mainstream media are struggling a little bit. They're struggling to make money in this online environment now, and a lot of them are sort of resorting to sensationalism or outrage culture or clickbaiting, and being overtly biased on one side and giving people what they think they want to hear rather than just reporting the facts on the news. And Claire made some great points at the moment about, on this panel about how just honesty and integrity is quite a valuable commodity when starting out as a new platform. If you can demonstrate up front that you are interested in the facts and you're going to, scratch under the surface of stories and try and give a more objective overview of things, people will gravitate towards that and people will support that. And we've seen that with Quillette at the moment. It's massive. It's getting huge amounts of coverage and endorsements from people who are very prominently known. So more power to her. I'm very pleased to see that's doing well. Tim's doing some great work as well. David Smalley, just a pro, did a great job moderating that. What is the impact of intersectionality? Okay, so this was the interesting one for me, the most entertaining for me. I don't know, I'm saying entertaining, the one I took the most interest in. Now, like I said, Mythcon struggled to get people to represent that intersectional viewpoint. They try and bring in academics, prominent people in the field, and they refuse time and time again. So we ended up with Mike and Chris Yossity, and again, fair play for turning out for them too. Now, something happened here that I just want to draw attention to. I don't know if you saw last year, Sargon of Akkad was challenged on stage about whether he I can't remember the exact wording of it. I'll probably insert the clip so you can see it.
Someone we all know, she was public about that. It's in the news, and it's in response to a campaign to try to fight online harassment. And you saw fit to tweet at her, to say to her, "I wouldn't even rape you."
Yep.
But he was asked that question by Thomas, and he replied, "Yep." And as you saw, the crowd cheered for that. And that was widely misrepresented as the crowd cheering in favour of sexual assault which seemed incredible to me. I mean, I've got, I isolated a little clip. I mean, here's a clip of that argument being made from Thomas.
This is the fundamental disconnect we have.
Damn right.
This is the reason why you have two extremely polarized groups of people. A group of people who are cheering, saying, I wouldn't even rape you, to a victim of sexual assault. You have those people. Cheering.
So you can actually hear someone there saying, that's not what we're cheering. But there was no pushback on stage, so that became a very popular misconception of the entire conference. People at Mythcon cheered for sexual... Who's cheering for sexual assault? It's bizarre. Nobody I know is all for sexual assault. It's a very niche market, the pro-sexual assault contingent. So what I want to draw a parallel to here is something very similar nearly happened on the intersectional panel, which I'll bring to your attention. So this is Chrisiosity on stage, and now she's about to make a very contentious point, which I'll just let you hear.
For instance, black people have a higher incidence of heart disease. We need to know that, and we need to understand the reasons why. We need to understand the reasons that black babies die in the first year so much more. In Milwaukee, that's a huge problem. Infant mortality among the black community is a huge problem, and they have taken away...
So, Chrisiosity just mentioned there's high mortality rate within infants in the black community. That's a real problem. That's a real problem. So there's got to be a reason for that. And she's about to offer one up. Let's hear.
You know, they've tried all different kinds of interventions. They've tried the prenatal care, but no matter what you do, no matter what you control for, there's still a problem. And they are coming to, it's the incredible stress of the racism and sexism. It's not, you can laugh at that.
Okay, so that got a laugh, and it seemed clear to me that the audience were vocalizing their incredulity at the idea that stress caused via racism is the leading cause of infant mortality in black communities. Now, that's a big claim. Now, I mean, that sounds like I don't know, Chrisiosity claims there's some literature to support this. It sounds like a hypothesis to me. I don't know how you can make, I don't know if that's a causal thing. It might just correlate, who knows. But I'm open to it. I'm open to the truth on that. So I will take time to look into that and find out what the truth is. But it seems clear to me the crowd is in a state of disbelief, and that's why they're laughing. Let's see how Michael summarizes this response.
Racism, it's so funny.
Haha, racism, it's so funny. So that's a deeply uncharitable straw man. The idea that they're going to be the crowd's laughing at racism leading to the death of dead babies, and this is a theme that goes on for a little while.
You can say that.
Yes, I said blacks, that's
guys,
racist.
Hey, we're not gonna turn this into last year. We're not gonna have a screaming fight with the crowd.
Tell him, Smalley.
Can I please speak to that? All right. I don't know what it's like to live under the stress of people who are racist and sexist against you for your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair comment, but I mean, we can all have a bit of empathy to it. We can get to that, we can get to that at some level. But I mean, there's a strange theme on this panel of both Michael and Chrisiosity kind of saying you do not have any idea what it feels like to be victims of racism, but we're going to be able to tell you. So they're kind of negating their own point. You can't know what it's like to be a victim of racism or live as a black person, but we do, which is very strange. Let's see what else she has to say.
Okay, so, but it is stressful. We know, there was just recently a study that came out that even people who work within the black community who are white, who bring them, who teach them and work with them, have a lot of racist beliefs.
Hey man, I think this white dude in the audience knows what it's like, all right?
There are studies of...
So, you know, that's the kind of thing that people are annoyed about with the intersectional SJW crowd. Oh, this white guy knows what he's talking about. This mocking of you for being a white guy. You know, your opinion's invalid because of your skin color, and that used to be called racism.
How doctors have racist ideas that impact on the health of people. And if you're looking out the back window all the time, trying to figure out how you're going to navigate a world that has this fucking thing against you because, you know, melanin, you know, that's fucking stressful. It's stressful. And when you have stress for a long time, it has what's called allostatic load. That's how it happens upon your physiology. And you can pass that to your baby. So maybe you can laugh at that. Maybe it's funny that people have stress.
They're not laughing because they think it's funny that people are stressed. They're laughing at the idea, the position she's just outlined, that this stress is responsible for infant mortality. Racist stress is responsible for infant mortality. That does sound laughable on the face of it. It might be true. We'll look into it. But this whole painting the crowd as somebody who's laughing at infant mortality and racism is just a deeply, deeply uncharitable way to approach this conversation. And this is what happened with the clip I showed you last time with Thomas.
And that can lead to these terrible consequences for yourself and your children and your community. Maybe that's a fucking pie in the sky of just joyous bliss for you. But
So it's been upgraded. Not only do they think it's funny that there is dead black babies because of racially inspired stress, it's blissful now. They're actually taking pleasure in the idea. That was like super mega massive mecha Strawman before we'd even put the hat on the last Strawman. So I just don't think you can approach conversations in that way. This is why people are getting pissed off with intersectionality and SJWism, because it's a lot of it saying you're not allowed to speak because of your skin color. Racist. You're a bad person, but I'm not. You're a bigot, I'm not. You're a racist, I'm not. If you have a differing opinion or don't buy what I'm selling, it's because you're a bigot, and it's because you're actually somebody who's pro-racism and pro-infant mortality. Let's see what else is said.
it isn't for everybody. It isn't always blissful for people who have to pay more on their mortgage with the same credit rating.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's a fair point. I wanted to ask Michael a question real quick.
Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because if that would just have been left there, it would have been the whole new thing on social media now. People at Mythcon laughed about dead black babies. I can just say, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if somebody's put that somewhere. But luckily, we have the presence of mind of roaming millennial Lauren Chen to just wipe that particular toilet seat, which I'm just going to find for you now.
If I could just say something, I don't think the audience wasn't laughing at dying black babies. They're laughing at the ridiculousness of the assertion.
All right, chill out, chill out.
Someone in Chicago is so stressed out about racism that it's causing instant.
So, nail on the head there. They're laughing at the assertion made by Chris Yossity, and fair play to Lauren. She says, well, that may or not be true. We have to look that up in our own time. But listen to the applause from the crowd. That's not the response of people who think racism's funny or think that dead black babies are funny. So that was the difference between this year and last year. Lauren picked up on that little misdirection, that straw man, and the year before that, the clap for sexual harassment thing wasn't picked up on, and it just goes to show that a comment can mean the difference between a complete misrepresentation of what happened on stage. I'm going to be charitable to Mike and Chris Yossity. I'm not saying they invented that viewpoint maliciously. I think they genuinely took that reaction to mean what they said it did. I just think they're completely wrong.
Hold on, I don't think they heard.
Didn't even hear what she said.
Hold on.
People should go where empiricism takes them.
Hold on, I want to let, because they cheered and they didn't hear.
I didn't hear what you said. Can you say it again?
So well, if you could restate that.
Yeah, I think they're laughing at the ridiculousness of the assertion that the stresses of racism are so intense that they are actually causing mortality. No one thinks that dying dead babies who are black is funny. That's not.
If they think that is ridiculous, then I guess they're not very good fucking skeptics.
Yeah, I mean, that's
like,
obviously...
Well, I mean, to be fair to them, they've heard you give a stat, they haven't seen it, and that's something I think we should all in our own time look up, right?
So I'll do...
See, that's perfectly fair. She was very... I really enjoyed watching her work. I mean, it's not so much like I felt like she won the argument. She was just very level-headed and very charitable with her opponents, and really engaged in dialogue, and was quick to point out points of agreement as well. So for me, Roaming Millennial really stood out as the best contributor of this panel as far as I'm concerned. So I'd go and check out more of her stuff, but obviously there's that issue of her being a right-wing conservative, so we're going to disagree on a lot of things as well. So I don't know where we go from there. Basically, I don't know how we solve this problem of the sense that the right-wing conservatives are making on this topic in particular, or on free speech, or on campus wars, or on identity politics. So that for me was a standout panel. I think that was my favourite panel of the show. The very last panel, the big one, the one everyone was waiting for, was Sargon of Akkad versus Richard Carrier. Round 2, ding ding ding. Now this was interesting, very interesting, because Sargon went out there ready to fight, and he was waiting for someone who represented all the horrible things we know are true of social justice warriors and intersectional feminists. However, Richard Carrier didn't seem to embody any of those. He played a game of no true Scotsman, really. Every time Sargon would throw something out that was horrible, done in the name of social justice warriors, Richard Carrier wouldn't attempt to defend it. He'd say, yes, I agree, that's horrible, but real social justice is this, and there is a level of real social justice that means something and is valuable to society. It just doesn't seem to be the one that's representative of the movement as a whole. But it's hard to know when you deal online whether the loudest voices are a minority, or whether they really do represent this movement. But this was clearly frustrating for Carl, and he got very quite rude and bad-tempered, repeatedly telling Richard to shut up. And it was interesting to see the crowd turning their allegiances. We had a lot of people applauding for Carl, who were just Carl fans at the beginning, and then later on the applause seemed to come Richard's way a lot more, and it was just interesting to see the dynamic of that conversation change. Don't get me wrong, Sargon made some great points as well, and Richard made some great points, but I think just on balance, I think Richard probably did a better job here. So here we have a situation where, pantomime villain, most evil person on the planet, according to some, Carl was allowed to speak on stage, and he got to speak to somebody who wasn't driven by emotions or anger, someone who, to be fair, under quite a barrage of bad-tempered and ill will from Sargon, remained calm and cool and stated his feelings and arguments coherently, and that made Richard come off better than Carl, I would have to say. So that's what happens when you get someone on stage who wants to do a good job, and I was very pleased to see that play out that way. Like I said, to Sargon's credit, he's made a video now where he apologizes for his temper and the way he behaved on that, so fair play to him. No arguments there. What I respect about him, he's always interested in dialogue. He'll always talk. He's always interested in a conversation, and it's the people who want to shut these conversations down that I struggle to find time for. So that was my Mythcon experience. I love Milwaukee. Nice little Midwestern city, loads of nice bars, American hoppy ales, so much cheese, such little time. The after party was great. I managed to stay out of trouble. Nearly missed my flight the next day, slept through my alarm. But all in all, a wonderful experience. I'm really huge fans of the organisers of this conference now. I'm really pleased with what they're trying to achieve, and I've said this before, I think that bringing in different voices from different spheres on contentious topics that a lot of people are interested in now is where it is in terms of this discussion. It's what people want to see, and I feel that a lot of the more traditional formats and conferences we've seen will have to adapt. Will have to adopt, should I say, this new model if they want to stay relevant, if they want to bring in some, young, vibrant voices and some new blood into their organizations. They're going to have to engage on the topics that people find interesting now. So hats off to them. I really hope what they plan to do next is successful. So make sure you find their GoFundMe link. They're hoping to bring Mythcon to a city near you. I think this is a great idea, getting out of Milwaukee, expanding, having different kinds of conversations in different places. So I'll put a link to the GoFundMe in the description. Where are we at? They've got $310 so far. Surely we can do a little bit more than that for them. Did I mention the bomb threat? I did mention the bomb threat. What was really interesting about the bomb threat was it was impossible to know who was responsible. Think about that. So think about the diversity of thought at a conference like Mythcon. You'd no idea who you've pissed off sufficiently to phone in a bomb threat. So I know leading up to the event they had a lot of abuse and threats from people who were quote-unquote alt-right. So it could have been them. It could have been a far-left social justice warrior. And it could have been a religious conservative. That just goes to show the kind of people at this conference that we cannot be sure from which sphere this bomb threat came. It wasn't particularly scary, personally. I mean, it looks serious. There's a high police presence. They'd cordoned off the street. It took them a good hour to search the building. But I tend to think that, if somebody phones in a bomb threat at an event, I think you know what that is. 9 times out of 10, it's very unlikely there's going to be an explosive. They just want to shut things down. And it failed. The show went on as planned, and it made the news. It made headlines. Mythcon was in the headlines because of this bomb threat. So they've just gifted this organization this free publicity. People who had no idea this conference existed are now reading about it in headlines, and if they're people like me, they're going to be interested into why that conference has been shut down. They're going to want to know who was speaking and what they had to say. So congratulations on providing Mythcon with a tremendous amount of free advertising that can only benefit them. And the show continued as planned. Didn't skip a beat when we returned back to the stage. So complete failure. And I think that's about it. I've probably bored you now for a good 50 minutes. Definitely check out the GoFundMe link. Give them some support. I think what they're doing is really interesting now. I'd like to see it grow. So anything you can do to help them achieve that, I'm sure they'll greatly appreciate. You can keep up to date on my blogs, my podcast, my YouTube channel at gspellchecker.com. You can follow me on Instagram, gspellchecker, follow me on Twitter, gspellchecker, follow me on Facebook, gspellchecker. Yeah, I'm trying to spread myself out at the minute the way people are getting banned from social networks and various platforms. I just had my entire YouTube channel demonetized for false reasons. The reason I assumed that someone would have reported me for abusive rhetoric, or because they don't like my politics or the kind of topics I cover. I've been reported for duplication. Now what that means is sometimes people will take other people's work. I know this because people have done this to me, and they will upload it on their own YouTube channel, slap some ads on it, and when the hits come in, they'll get the dollars, which is a bad thing to do. I'm against that. That's what my channel's been demonetized for. And my channel is full of purely original content. So it's podcasts I've recorded, it's events I've recorded, it's commentary such as this I've recorded, where admittedly I do bring in other clips, but I'm commentating on them under the guise of fair use. I'm not just uploading someone else's work and monetizing it. So this is clearly either A, a mistake, or B, politically driven. Some people have been reporting and flagging my videos to try and get me off, to prevent me from making money on YouTube, which is okay. I don't make much money on YouTube. I don't have a great amount of subscribers on here. I don't have a tremendous amount of time to put in to make videos. So I think if you do want to support me and the content I'm putting out, the best way to do that would be to go to Patreon and just pledge to give $1 a month or $1 per content, or however much you want to contribute. And you can do this by going to patreon.com/gspellchecker. Thank you for watching me ramble for an hour.